I was green before Brat Summer. I just want that to be clear. I was also green before joining a company with a green logo. Um, it's just that we like the same colors. It's like deep philosophical alignment, I think. Okay, so I'm going to present my art project, Twitter 95, featuring this tweet from Jerry Springer about the Oklahoma City bombing, among others. So Twitter 95 is a solution to a problem that I actually had like before language models existed. I noticed this thing on this subreddit called r/askhistorians. It's a place where you can go and ask questions about history and get answers. You get answers from like PhDs and professors of history, very detailed, cited sources. It's kind of like talking to ChatGPT, but the answers are actually right. And there were all these questions on it that were like, how did X react to Y? Like, how did the Qin dynasty react to the publication of Charles Darwin's Origin of the Species? Or like, how did the English audiences react to the idea of voting in when Shakespeare's Caesar plays came out? And there's like all these questions, there were all these questions like that in this forum. And I think the reason why people were asking these questions is it's this form of presentism. Presentism is like a bias in how we engage in history, where we like want it to be more like the present. We like approach it from the frame of our like present understanding. And in our present, there is a lot of like reaction to events and to news. Like my favorite example of this is a top trending topic on Twitter a while back. TV viewers react to Bill Maher's reaction to America's reaction to the crisis in Afghanistan. So we're now like 3 levels of reaction deep from like an actual event. And like you could, write whole dissertations about how like maybe this is a bad thing or whatever, or you could just embrace it and say like, all right, so part of like the way that we interact with the present is that we interact with it through social media. It'd be great if we could interact with the past with social media. Then you could look at it and you could know like how, like what is plausible how the Qin dynasty would have reacted to the origin of the species. And so a couple years ago, I like had this idea and I was like, dang, like you'd have to write like a lot of tweets. You'd have to, and like I write a lot of tweets, but that's like a lot of tweets. And like back then language models weren't very good and I was like, yeah, it would just be like kind of like, you would write some and then you would like generate more and they wouldn't be very good. And so when the GPT models became available in the API, I was like played around with it. But then like finally in the last like year, got it together and put this whole like project together. So Twitter 95 is a live updating simulation of Twitter as it might have been if it was around in 1995. Why 1995? It's the year the future began. Among other things, the release of the Netscape Navigator browser, the Oklahoma City bombing, and the crisis in the Balkans, all like major events in this time. And so let me just I'll just click in and take a look at it here. So this is a live website. It's twitter-95.com. So there's a bunch of language models pretending to be people from the 90s. So here's like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar retweeting Stephen Hawking. Technology will be crucial in shaping our future society and economy. That's kind of cool. The more fun part is the like time travel part of it. So like let's go back to like a key date in 1995. So like April 25th, 1995. We've got a lot of hashtags trending, Justice for Oklahoma. Let's check out this trending hashtag from that day. The April 24th, I think, was the exact date, but the Oklahoma City bombing was around this time. So the way that this project works is like New York Times articles from specific days are tweeted out by the New York Times, and then all these celebrities are sort of like, they have it in their newsfeed, they have each other's tweets in their newsfeed, they start tweeting about it. So we got Justice for Oklahoma started trending. I think that started actually, Charles Barkley started the trending tweet, Justice for Oklahoma. See some other favorite ones, like Pray for Srebrenica, another classic. Who can forget the classic hashtag Pray for Srebrenica from mid-1995 that Mother Teresa got viral. So like the idea with this project is like many of us spend a lot of time on social media, and there's like a natural way of interacting with things that comes from that. Like, oh, how did this person react to it? Like, what was, and sort of like navigating around a social network is a very natural thing if you spend a lot of time doing it. And it's like a very different thing than like working through historical archive. So it's mostly been like, this was kind of a demo project, so mostly like fun, thought-provoking kind of thing. So just a little bit about like how I put that together. Let's see, back to full screen. Yes, the basic idea is like any number of archival APIs, you like kind of pull information from them. We have the past, so we can pull information from it. We know what the newspapers were talking about on a particular day in 1995. We have Usenet archives. We have all this past information. So pull that in, like store it somewhere, and then like retrieve from that, put it out into this social network. That kind of, there's other kind of like social network experiments out there. We have language models talking to each other, but there's nothing to like ground them back in reality. And so like injecting information from archives gives you that like grounding back in reality. So yeah, the like stack here is ended up just going with the New York Times. They have a great archive, lots of information in it. It's well split out, so you can make sure that like Ronald Reagan sees stuff about politics and like Brett Favre sees stuff about sports. And then another like kind of major unlock in this project was also switching over from using proprietary language models like OpenAI's over to using Llama models and being able to run them at like, pretty close to state-of-the-art performance with libraries like VLLM. So just like double click on some of the stack there. So the like nice trendy stack. So like async Python on the back end, using like Supabase to store a Postgres database. I found that actually it's really nice developer experience. Vercel for the front end. Also like the Vercel React Next stack. Once you get your mind around it, highly productive. So you can focus on the like really annoying, how do I get these language models to work part. And then like orchestrating all of this kind of like in the center there is Modal. So that's the company that I work for. It's serverless infrastructure designed for like ML data AI projects. So just a brief shill. The idea is to make like containerized microservices that handle lots and lots of data, like easy and good and like fun, high velocity development instead of agonizing pain. So like, for example, interacting with that New York Times archive, like I could have spent a bunch of time like writing my own client for talking to the New York Times archive and read through their documentation, or I could use the PyNY Times library. But the problem with using these, like, look, there's all these great libraries, like a YouTube downloading library in Python, but it's like the problem with them is like you end up with this really complex environment and then they disagree about the version of some like third order transitive dependency like markdown safe or whatever, and now you're in trouble. So like being able to separate things out, put them in containers, that's great, but now you have like an orchestration problem. So Modo helps you solve those orchestration problems, gives you the infrastructure to deploy them. So one of the key like step jumps in the quality of this project was when I switched out the like GPT-4o model for the for Llama 3.1 405B. And I was able to run that on, you can if you do the 8-bit quantization with 405B, you can fit it just barely with enough room for KV cache on 8 H100s and run at like a reasonable speed. And that's also set, like modal was like straightforward. I just took a function that previously was talking to an OpenAI API, just like, okay, now you have 8 H100s to run Llama 405B. So that helped a lot. Like the OpenAI models have been like kind of increasingly like slopifying over time, and the Llama models, in my experience, have had a lot less of that problem. But then Noose Research, who like shout out to Noose, they make some like incredible fine tunes of open models, including the Llama series, dropped Hermes 3, which is like function and tool calling oriented fine tune of the Llama models, and I was able to drop down from the 405B model down to 70B, still get really high quality tool calling so that they could like interact with the the fake Twitter API that I had. And now it's like it's 2 H100s. And it's just like easier easier auto scaling, all that kind of stuff. And like in another little layer of deslopification, the news fine tunes are sort of less, I'm a helpful chat bot who must follow OpenAI's policies, and a lot more, chill. So they'll like get in a little Twitter beef in a way that the other models were less willing to. Yeah. Yeah, check it out, twitter-95.com. It's kind of like, yeah, there's also, I forgot to go through this. This is fun. There's a bunch of like Linus Torvalds and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates arguing about open source versus proprietary systems. So there's fun little like nuggets and pockets in there. But yeah, so that's the project. And yeah, it was all made possible by modal serverless infrastructure for running code, including Llama models, diffusion models in the cloud without all the agonizing pain. Thank you.